So we're here today with Morgan Eves, the sorta new executive director of the Kentucky Democratic Party. Morgan, welcome to Moving Kentucky Forward.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm happy to be here.
I think a lot of our viewers and listeners already know your name and they know that you're now at the KDP, but I doubt that they know much about your background. So before we get into talking about the party itself, why don't you give us a quick bio rundown?
Yes, I will give you as condensed a version as I can. I'm 35 years old, but have been in Kentucky politics for quite a while. I'm originally from Richmond and Madison County, and it was always a goal of mine to serve our Commonwealth in one way or the other. After I went to law school and came back home, I
Hmm.
saw that the same people that were on city commission in Richmond when I was a kid were still on there when I was a young professional, and we weren't keeping up with our neighboring communities. We weren't growing as fast. We didn't have as much economic development, and our kind of the disparity between classes, the rich, the poor, was only growing.
Hmm.
So I decided as a young lawyer to run for Richmond City Commission. I believe I was 25 or 26. And through that time, I served one term. I was able to help direct more investments to programs for at risk youth in the community, as well as more funding for public transportation. So, really, kind of that democratic spirit right at the local level.
Hmm.
After that, as a result of Trump's election, we lost, I think, as a lot of your listeners probably know, Kentucky lost the House. We lost the majority, and Democrats fell kind of one by one in the Kentucky House with Trump at the top of the ticket, including former Representative Rita Smart, who is from Madison County. And I decided that night, I'm gonna try because I knew she wasn't gonna run again. She had already said, if I lose this time, I'm not gonna run again. So I kind of decided that election night, I was still a city commissioner, but I decided instead of running for a second term, I'm going to see if I can kind of expand my advocacy to Frankfort. Ran for a state house seat and lost by 24 votes. So
Hmm.
I am very aware that every vote counts. And that's kind of what I always think about now that I'm at KDP. But after that, I found my way to Governor Beshear's administration, where I served first in his office, working in his legislative services department, really acting as an internal lobbyist for him, talking to a lot of Republicans in that role and trying to get some stuff done for folks out in the Commonwealth. Then
Hmm.
I shifted to the Education and Labor Cabinet during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I understood really what everyone was going through out in the state because I was talking to them every day in that job during the pandemic. After that, I went to a global education nonprofit working on the advocacy side in about 10 states, working with governors and state legislators to prioritize school improvement policies that left no child behind. And when the governor calls, the answer is always yes, at least for me. So I got the call and the ask to head the KDP, and he is someone, the governor, that I really believe in. I believe in his spirit of service, and that's what I wanted to bring to this role, and I happily said yes.
I really think that having run for office twice gives you some insights that other executive directors may not have had. I just think there's nothing like having run for office, win or lose. You learn a lot, you understand a lot, I think. So you're now at KDP and Coleman Eldridge is the chair. So you're working with Coleman and then staff. I have lost track of some of the staff except for Kenny Fogel, bless his heart. We all know Kenny.
Kenny's still hanging in there. Yeah,
I'll tell you, Kenny's a gem.
he
We all
is.
love Kenny. So who else is on staff? I'm not clear on anybody else.
So we have Charlotte Flannery, who
Mhm.
has been there for me what seems like a really long time because she has been there really the entirety of my journey in Kentucky politics.
Mhm.
She's our operations director, and without her, I don't think I could function. She has the institutional knowledge that we need She
Right.
has great relationships out in the state. We also have John Levin, who moved here from DC. He was working on the Hill, and we needed a new communications director, and he took the call, and he's doing a great job. We also have with him Clarissa Fisher. She is our digital director. We have Cameron Lopez, our data director, and Lucas Johnson, our finance director.
Okay. I just have to ask, Jonathan Levin, come from DC. Did he have any background in Kentucky, or is this like culture shock?
He did not. I think it is I think his first day, his first or second day, the Washington County Democratic Party had their annual dinner.
Hmm.
And what they do is it's a total Southern meal, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, all that good stuff. And then they have a cake auction to raise money for their club. I think that was something he had only seen in the movies, probably, but it's a great demonstration of really how different areas in Kentucky operate.
Yeah.
Because since then, he's been to Lexington and Louisville. He's also been to some rural areas, but it was a great experience for him, I think, just to really get down in the weeds with some of these county parties and see that the adage all politics is local is
Hmm.
true. I mean, that's how these county parties function, and it was a good experience for him, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only thing that could be more Kentucky politics would be to go to Fancy Farm.
Fancy Farm,
And
yes,
bless his
yeah.
heart, I hope he gets to experience that. Okay, so you walk in the door, you're fairly familiar with the state of things in Kentucky since you lost that one race, and you've, I'm sure, been watching things even while you're working for the educational nonprofit. So when you walked in the door, can you tell us in like two or three bullets what state you found the team and the party in?
Yeah, the what is interesting about being involved in politics is that you're not always familiar with party politics.
Hmm.
So I came into it knowing what KDP did at a very high level, but I didn't know kind of the granular interactions we have with the national DNC or even the county parties.
Hmm.
So when I walked in, thankfully, I found a team, namely Charlotte and Kenny, and our past ED, Sebastian Kitchen, who gave me a lot of that institutional knowledge. And the team as a whole was really enthused, and their morale was good because they all helped reelect Governor Beshear and Lieutenant Governor Coleman and made big gains. 5%. He won by a little bit more than 5%,
Hmm.
which in a red state is a landslide. So
Hmm.
he increased his win, and they were all part of that team. So their morale was really, really good. And they've continued to be upbeat and optimistic. And I'm lucky that they've also acted as a teacher for me.
So, I talked to a lot of Democrats across the state, and there is varying degrees of, I don't know what the word would be, catastrophizing, I guess would be the right word, varying degrees of, oh my God, we're all dying. There's not going to be no Democrats in the state in another 5 years. And yet there are some people who say, no, no, just hang on. The young people are coming is one common phrase. So how do you find, I'm sure you've been traveling, you've been to some things. How do you find the enthusiasm and the ready to go attitude across the state? Is there a lot of defeatism, or do you find people who are coming up to you and saying, okay, let's get it?
It's a mix of both. And I guess the refreshing thing that I found about those people who do feel a little bit defeated is that they haven't been defeated. So their spirit might be a little down, but they're still willing to get up and do the work on behalf of candidates, which is really important because the minute we have people that kind of would rather sit on their couch than get out and get out the vote, that's really when we've lost. what I always tell people is, look, this was a really long road for the GOP to get where they are.
Hmm.
And we need to keep that at the forefront of our mind. They didn't get where they are overnight. We had a really long, amazing history of being in the majority. Now it's time to regroup. Now it's time to put in the hard work. And if we all do it together, we can get back to where we were while, passing policy that's better for Kentuckians than what the GOP is showing us. So I always tell people it's a great opportunity. They've shown us who they are. Now we just have to do something about it.
Yeah, it's the Maya Angelou quote, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Yes,
Um,
and they have absolutely done that.
Absolutely. So, without giving away the farm, which you're not going to do, can you tell me something about strategy? I mean, I have a fairly strong opinion about maybe what KDP should be doing in terms of elections, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Where do you see us going this year, and what's your long-term view of recovering some of that super duper majority back to us?
The overarching kind of theme of my strategy is building infrastructure.
Hmm.
To have a great, powerful, far reaching state party, you have to have infrastructure.
Hmm.
And that includes a lot of different things under that umbrella. I think you have seen us and will see us more in the future continue to revamp our communications operation. I'm really lucky to have John and Clarissa to work on the comms and digital side with me. But we know that there are people out in the state who want to share our message. They want to talk to their friends and family about what's happening in Frankfort and why the GOP, when they're passing bills trying to take away workers' lunch break or, reduce SNAP benefits, taking food off of the table of Kentucky families, they want that information to be able to talk to folks in their community about it. We just need to give them the tools to do that.
Hmm.
So you saw during the legislative session that we were regularly distributing talking points to folks out in the state, and we'll continue to do that even through the interim. But those will change a little bit because they're going to be more focused on what to talk about at election time.
Hmm.
We're also going to be helping candidates across the board, even probably some folks that are running in a nonpartisan race with their messaging. Governor Beshear won because he has a moderate message that appeals to everybody because he talks about the things that affect every single person. And we see the GOP passing legislation to gut a lot of these kitchen table issues. You know, I never thought someone had the right to take away my lunch break. To hear that they do and they're willing to do it is pretty alarming. So
Hmm.
if we have the messaging, we arm our folks out in the state to talk to their friends, neighbors, post on social media. We will do that. Same thing with candidates. We need them to be prepared to have these conversations and to be able to recap what happened in Frankfort and how to contrast themselves with what the GOP is doing. So that's one of the infrastructure parts. Another big one is meeting voters where they are. We have seen in rural counties, even before kind of our losses in the House, that a lot of these rural counties were just feeling a little bit left behind.
Hmm.
And that has kind of led to their local Democratic parties struggling. So hopefully soon I'll be able to announce some pretty exciting news about what we're going to do to outreach to some of these communities because the governor did flip a lot of counties from red to blue, including in rural Kentucky.
Hmm.
We just have to use that momentum to re-energize folks when Andy Beshear is not on the ballot. And we think we figured out a way to do that. So that's another kind of infrastructure issue that we're working on.
That's very exciting. For a long time, I have been a big believer in politics as local, and you got to have strong county parties, and even at the precinct level where you can do it. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that. And yes, I've already noticed a difference in the digital messaging. So congrats to all the people working on that because it's already, I think, better and more frequent and shows a lot of promise. one of the things that I'm intrigued about is what's your relationship now and what is it going to be with State Central? Some of us in the past have been a little upset with State Central because we felt like it was either ignored or ineffective. And again, part of infrastructure certainly is State Central. So, well, how do you find that situation, and is there anything you want to do about it?
Yeah, you hit on it. And this is really one of the other things that I'm working on is so for those people that don't know, State Central Executive Committee is really, in a sense, KDP's kind of board of governors, our board of advisors. They vote on everything from, finance, budgets to, to our bylaws changes. So they're a very integral part of the party. But to your point, Bruce, I think they have been underutilized. And they represent all 120 counties because they're divided out into congressional districts. So we need to figure out how to re-energize this group of folks that really should be built-in kind of activists and folks that are going out into their communities and spreading our message. And so my first dip into that has been to, after attending a meeting and kind of seeing, I guess, some listlessness from some of them. You can tell that a lot of them feel underutilized. And so I said, okay, why don't you guys, before every meeting, everybody get together in your congressional district, designate one person that's going to be a liaison between KDP and your congressional district. And before every meeting, submit stuff to us that says what you're doing to recruit candidates in your district, to recruit volunteers for campaigns, and to educate voters. And what I mean by educate voters is, are you talking to them about what's happening in the state of politics in Kentucky? Are you helping draw that contrast between GOP, which I always say is the party, I always say Democrats are the party of we, and GOP is the party of me. Are you helping drawing that contrast in your local community? And then, over the next few months after I get kind of that first batch of reports, Coleman and I will be able to say, okay, here's what people are doing. Here's where they need help. How can we re-energize these people and take this information that they've given us and turn it into a real exchange that's really grassroots driven in these congressional districts with these State Central members at the core. So yes, it's a big part of KDP, and I think they need to be utilized in a different way. And they should be our biggest advocates. They should be the ones that are spreading the message, but they just have to be empowered to do that.
You may or may not know this, but you are following in the steps of a long time ago chair who had 6 congressional district representatives and organized the entire thing around those 6. And it was at the time one of the most productive and most healthy Democratic Party times in Kentucky. So congrats on that, because that's exactly what needs to be done. Even though we're dealing with a first district that is so silly, it's just a national joke, but that's another problem for another day.
I agree.
The other thing I wanted to ask about, and this is probably a painful topic, is money. On the one hand, we saw Governor Beshear raise a large amount of money for his reelection, and yet I have talked to candidates repeatedly who have said either A, I don't get any help from KDP at all, or B, I don't have the money I need to run, and I can't raise it in my area because it's so red, or whatever the case may be. And then there's all the everyday things that KDP needs to pay for, including facilities and software licenses and whatever. So again, without naming an actual number, what's the financial situation right now, and what are your plans around it?
Yeah, look, we have a really popular governor, and
the most popular Democratic governor in the country.
Rightfully so. And I feel certain he will stay that way throughout his second term. he raised a lot of money because he knew he had to spend a lot of money.
Hmm.
And we got help, the Democratic Governors Association, it was their top investment last year. And again, rightfully so. In order to maintain the health of the state Democratic Party, we had to win that race.
Hmm.
And we did. And he is so generous with his time because he continues to help raise money into the party. And that's key because if we have somebody that is that popular, that's getting nationwide attention, we need to capitalize on that. And I didn't even have to ask. He's very generous, and I'm always grateful for it every day. Right now, KDP is in a good financial position, but I'll tell you, there's a misconception, I think, that this state party or any state party is flush with cash.
Mm.
The goal of state parties is not only to operate, and quite frankly, most across the country operate on as small a scale as possible. Can you get the work done you need to do with the smallest amount of people? That should always be the challenge because the remainder of all that money should be going to candidates. I've been a candidate, and I I'll tell you, I didn't ask KDP for help because I did emerge, and they really focus on you have to raise the money and
Hmm.
then you have to decide how to spend it. Obviously, some candidates need more help than others. You mentioned there are a lot of folks running in really red districts where it's just hard to raise the money.
Hmm.
But I don't see a time in the near future where we will have the resources to give to candidates, in all 100 House districts. That just is not feasible. Maybe one day, but we are going to give folks a lot of kind of non-monetary support this year that I think it's been a really long time since we've done it. Maybe we've never done some of the things we're going to do. So I'm really challenging myself and my staff to find other ways where we can help set candidates up for success, knowing we will always have limited resources.
So, as we wrap this up, I have two final questions. First of all, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
Oh, I'm always here to pitch. So
All
we
right.
have it's been a while since KDP has done, their big annual statewide dinner.
Right.
Used to be branded, I think, the Wendell Ford dinner. We've rebranded that. We're calling it the Forward Together, which was Bashir and Lieutenant Governor Coleman's slogan for their inauguration. So luckily they let us steal that. The Forward Together dinner is going to be Friday, June 14th. You can find information on our website if you're interested in attending. We have two really great co-keynote speakers this year. They'll be announced later this week.
Okay.
So, if you're able to, please join us.
So, what was the name again? Forward
Forward Together.
Together. Are you going to take sponsorships for this dinner?
We are not. And the only reason is we are asking a lot of folks for the Democratic National Convention in August. The cost would be huge, I'll tell you, if KDP did it alone.
Hmm.
$250,000 to $500,000 is probably what it would cost. So we are asking for sponsorships for that. And I know we really beat people up during Governor Bashir's reelection last year, so I'm trying to give folks a little breather. But no, we'll have some great guest speakers, and I think everyone will be really excited.
Well, I was just thinking that Forward Kentucky should help sponsor Forward Together. It just sounded right to me. Well, that's exciting. I'm glad to hear that. And I'll be looking forward to the announcement about it. And so, my last question is this: if I were to give you a magic wand and say you could wave this magic wand and have any 1 to 3 wishes, no more than three,
Oh gosh.
that you can make happen just by waving the wand, what would those 1 to 3 magic wishes be?
You know, number one would be that the gerrymandered maps never got drawn. That would be a
Excellent.
good one. Oh
Yes.
gosh. Um, Number two would be that young people are more engaged.
Hmm.
And I'm not so old. I'm 35. I'm technically still a young Democrat. But in the age of social media, it's really difficult to get young people. And by that, I mean, late teens, voting age to mid to late 20s. It's really difficult to get those folks off the couch.
Hmm.
And they'll post, they'll be kind of online warriors, but it's difficult to get them activated. And I'm still working on that equation. So just motivating those young Democrats.
Hmm.
And by the way, I am a huge fan of Allison Wiseman and the Kentucky Young Democrats who've done an amazing job of organizing, but sort of the population as a whole.
Hmm.
If I could wave that one and get them all canvassing for me, I'd be very happy.
Hmm.
Um, and number three, gosh, that it wasn't so expensive to run campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Everything,
good.
everything from yard signs to mailers and the candidates have to raise that as we were talking about earlier, but we also have to raise that to support our candidates. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with that one. I wish it were more accessible for people to run for office because the cost is so high that it scares some people off.
Hmm. All right. Those are three good wishes. Although I will say that if the gerrymandered maps had never been drawn the way they were, we wouldn't be able to have Aaron Marshall running against Jamie Comer,
Yeah, that's right.
which
She's
I
definitely
find so deliciously ironic
she's
every time I
really
think about it.
sticking it to him. Go
Well, and the
Aaron.
fact that she's in Frankfurt. If they hadn't drawn the map that way, she couldn't run.
Yeah,
Anyway, I could go on and on about Aaron Marshall because I think she's wonderful.
she is.
Morgan Eves, the sort of new executive director of Kentucky Democratic Party. I will tell you that everybody I speak to is excited about you being there and excited about seeing where it's going to go. So I want to wish you the very best of luck. And I don't think you need luck because you have skill. So go get them, and we're right behind you.
Thank you. No pressure, right?
Right.
Thank you. I'm really grateful that I got the call and I'm happy to be here. So thank you.